Hello, my name is Ivana White, and I will be discussing voting trends in America. Okay, to start this off with a little disclaimer, I am not choosing any sides, I'm not bashing any sides, I'm giving facts and ideas of why I believe people vote the way that they do. Okay, so there are 5 main generations we are going to be talking about today, and those generations include the Greatest Generation, which was a part of World War I, the Baby Boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z. Generation Y is currently going on right now. Okay, so 2 things before we get started. People usually tend to stick with the same party they chose as a young adult. So when you're a young adult, you usually choose what party you will be a part of, and then you stick with that. It's not to say you can be Republican and not pick a Democrat. But that's just simply what you do. People usually stick with the one that they choose, and that's the one that they use. Okay. Also, I've noticed a pattern, and the pattern is when during times of war, people usually choose a Democrat. During times of war, people usually choose a Republican as president, and during times of equality and bad economics, people choose a Democrat as president, and I will discuss this, and I will give ideas of why I believe women are voting more than men, why certain minorities or the majority of population vote Democrats or Republican, and we will be discussing this using facts and knowledge and some ideas that I have. Okay, so people usually lean towards the Republican side in times of war, and you can see this during the Great War, which is also part of who was a part of the Greatest Generation. They elected Teddy Roosevelt as president. They believe they wanted something secure. People usually lean to the Republican side in times of war, due to feeling more secure and that the Republican president could do better than a Democrat one, and they'll get the job done and keep the people safe. This can also be seen with Generation X, because Generation X was a part of the Cold War and the Vietnam War, and this group of people is usually more a Republican side, and if you look at voting rates, you will see that this generation of people, also called the Silent Generation, is always more Republican than Democratic. So this is 2 examples of when people have leaned more toward the Republican side during times of war. People usually lean more toward the Democratic side during times of equality and bad economics, because they believe a Democrat could do better than a Republican could, due to being more liberal and having more equality issues and ideas, and that they will be able to secure them financially. You can see during the 1920s women's rights movement, the Supreme Court case, during this time, a Democrat wasn't president, and that was Woodrow Wilson, and women gained the right to vote after that, and after him succeeded a Republican president, Warren G. Harding. Also, during the Civil Rights Movement of 1965, let's say John F. Kennedy was president, but then when he was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson took his place, and during that a Democrat was in office. This is 2 things showing. And also, thirdly and finally, the 3rd Supreme Court case that is going to be used as an example is when, currently this year, gay marriage was legalized, and with the Democrat in president, all 3 times with these 3 equality reasons, a Democrat was in president, and equality has persevered. Also, people usually more towards a Democrat during times of economics. You can see this during the Great Depression. Roosevelt was president, and he was a Democrat, and people believed, I kind of think this is where the idea started, that a Democrat could do better than a Republican during economic crisis, because Franklin D. Roosevelt did everything in his power to alleviate the people of the financial troubles and to free them, to help them, and to make them to be able to put food on the table for their families, and to be able to keep safe, to have money and food, and he did everything in his power to do that with the Roosevelt plans. The people elected him after Herbert Hoover because they believed he put them into the Great Depression, which is not true, and he was a Republican. It's just so you can have some background information on that. Also, groups that lean towards the Democratic side are usually minorities, including blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Jewish people, and religiously unafflicted people. They tend to do this because this group of people is more liberal, and also because minorities are usually financially struggled than the majority of the population. For example, I know just black people alone, African Americans, make up about 14.4% of jobless people. And when you are in need, you tend to lean more towards having the Democratic side because you need money to feed your family. I'm sorry. So yeah, feed your family and stuff. And also the millennia generation, the generation that we the millennia generation, also known as Generation Z, which is what generation I'm a part of. We are a really democratic crowd because this crowd is more liberal and they're more free, I want to say, and they more push towards the Democratic side. Also, groups that tilt towards the Republican side are Mormon, white Southerners, and the silent generation. The silent generation is Generation X, as we talked about earlier, who had to go through the Great War, or not the Great War, I'm sorry, the Vietnam War and the Cold War, and they're more Republican because, as I said, during times of war, people usually lean towards the Republican side. This is due to them feeling more secure there. But also, Mormons typically lean, I believe it was about 70 to 77% of Mormons are usually Republican. This is due to social reforms in the 1960s, such as the civil rights movement, also abortion in the 1980s, and marriage equality in 2015. They lean more towards the Republican side. I'm sorry, somebody just called me. They lean more towards it. Dad, I'm making a video! Towards the Republican side. Due to these reasons and the beliefs that the Republicans could do better than the Democrats could because their ideas and their beliefs and ideas like that. Also, women vote substantially more than men. This is due to women wanting equality, and people want equality for women because there is more equality, but there is still some unequalness, and women are starting to want to do better. There were some statistics that I looked up, and about 64% of women vote, while about 56% of men vote, and this is steadily increasing, and this is due to the fact that women want equality. They're more involved. Typically, they're more involved in the government, such as this is something that I looked up, and it's this fact that they are typically the ones who have to apply for like food stamps and childcare and stuff like that, and so they see that they need to vote to do better for themselves and their children. And finally, the voting rate is dropping dramatically. Just from the 2008 to the 2012 election, 13 million less people voted. This is due to the fact that young people feel that it's mostly young people of ages 18 to 33 who are not voting. This is a large part of this. I think it was about like 30%. They feel that they cannot, that might not be correct, but that's what I'm believing. They feel as though they cannot trust the government, that their vote does not matter because of the electoral system, or they're not educated enough in their decisions, so they do not vote. This is due to the fact that people do not have the time to watch the debates on television and make the correct decision of who they want to be in office. They feel as though they cannot trust their government because the government is not helping them enough, as in with financial reasons, and they don't believe the same things that's going on with wars or the same thing that's going on with equality, so they're choosing not to vote. And finally, they believe their vote does not matter because of the electoral system, because they feel as though if somebody's going to make a choice for them, there's no point to vote. But I would just like to say that your one vote matters, and everything you do matters. So you should take time to vote, because when you vote, your friend will see that you're voting, and they'll vote, and it'll have a butterfly effect, and eventually they'll tell their friends, and the butterfly effect will happen, and your vote could change everything. Thank you for listening, and have a good day. Thanks.